Well, hello Internet, and welcome to part 2 of my JavaScript Paint application tutorial. In this part of the tutorial, I'm going to try to finish up the Paint application as quick as I can. Like always, all the code is available in the description underneath the video, and I have a lot to do, so let's get into it. Okay, so last time I showed you exactly what we're working towards, and we're going to be able to paint, we're going to be able to draw lines, and we're using rubber band effects. We're going to be able to draw rectangles, and circles, and ellipses, and polygons, as well as being able to save our images and load new ones. So now I'm going to jump over into the code. Okay, so last time what we said was whenever the user clicked in the toolbar to change a different tool, we needed to create a function called change tool, which was going to allow us to change those tools. So we're going to do that over in the JavaScript code. And in a minute here, I'm going to go through and try to figure out all of the different functions I'm going to need to make this work. And there's going to be a lot of math. So something to learn or maybe not learn. Okay, so change tool is what I called it. And it is going to get a string that is going to say what tool we want to use. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and reset all of the tools, the class name, because remember I had selected. Here, I'll show you. Whenever it loads, I have a class called selected, and that is just going to change the style on the toolbar, just so you know which tool you're currently using. And the selected change is that we change the background color to black, and I have this over in main.style.css. If you haven't watched the previous tutorial, definitely watch it, otherwise you're probably confused or you've probably already turned this video off. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to cycle through and we are going to reset the classes on all of those. So I'm going to say open class name and set it to nothing. And we're going to do that for all of the other different options that are in our toolbar. So I have save, and I also have brush, and I tend to move kind of quick, so get ready to click on that pause button or go and get the code. It's 100% for free. Rectangle and circle, ellipse, polygon, and that is all of them. So all those classes are going to be changed. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight the last selected tool that I have in my toolbar. So I can do that with documents, get element by ID, and then it's going to be what was passed into this function. So the tool that was clicked on, and then change its class name to selected. And that is going to give us the ability to go in there and change that. And I'm also going to change the current tool to what we want to draw. And that's going to be stored up here. Current tool set for brush in the beginning. Of course, none of these things do anything at this moment. Whoops, and I have a little bit of an error here. It's get element by ID. This is why you pay attention to the automated stuff that is put in here. So get element by ID needs to be changed. Okay, so they're all set now. Save that. And now whenever I reload the page, I can click on all of the different tools and they are going to be selected. And also whenever we institute the functions, we're going to be able to draw with these tools. So what do I need to do next? Well, I'm just going to list some functions that I know that I'm going to need. So I'm going to need the ability to get mouse positions based off of getting the canvas size and then repositioning based off of the size of the web page. So I want to get my mouse position. I'm also going to have to be able to save my canvas. So save canvas image. I'm also going to have to redraw the canvas image because every single time we go and add a new drawing, like a new rectangle or whatever, we need to completely redraw the whole entire canvas. So something we need to do. And so there's redraw canvas image. And to make the rubber band work, I'm going to have to constantly come up here and change the rubber band information. So the left, top, width, and height. So I'm going to have a function that just does that one thing. So update rubber band size data. Another function I'm going to need is the ability to use trigonometry to be able to get angles based off of X and Y positions with the mouse. Don't worry if that doesn't make any sense. I will go and make it make sense here in a minute. So I'm going to say get angle using X and Y position. That's all trigonometry. And since we're talking about trigonometry, I'm going to have to convert from radians to degrees. And if I convert from radians to degrees, I also may need the ability to convert from degrees to radians. I'm also going to need the ability to actually draw the shapes. So draw rubber band shape. So each time they click and then move around, the shape's going to be constantly redrawing on the screen. I'm also probably going to need to update my rubber band each time that it moves, each time the mouse moves. So update rubber band on movement. Also, in the previous tutorial, see, we created react to mouse movement. I'm going to have a function that handles that, of course. So react to mouse down and react, well, let's just paste that in there. React to mouse move. And then the other one is named react to mouse up. And the only other two functions that I definitely know that I need is save image as well as open image, because I already defined those over in the HTML. So if we come over here, you're going to see open image and save image. Okay. So now what I need to do is come in here and actually create all these different things. So how do we get our mouse position? Well, what should we call this function? How about we just call it exactly what we have here? So I'm going to call this get mouse position, and we're going to get the X and Y position. And basically what we need to do is get the canvas size and position inside of our web page. And how we do that is create a function or create a variable. I'm going to call it canvas size data. And how we get that information is go canvas and get bounding client rectangle. And then all we need to do then is go and get the canvas size point in the upper left-hand corner and multiply it times the canvas width, which is going to be divided by the canvas size overall width. So I'm going and getting the upper left-hand corner, and then I am going to be converting down based off of the difference between the canvas width and the actual web page width. So I'm going to return both of those. So I can say X is going to be equal to whatever the mouse position is minus the canvas data that we have. And then we're going to have to multiply that times canvas width divided by canvas size data width. And that will give us the mouse position inside of the canvas. Then I'm going to do pretty much the same exact thing for Y. Might as well just copy this. So the mouse position Y is going to be equal to Y, and this is minus, not equal to, and this is also minus. So I'm going to get the canvas size, and this is data like that, data, and this is going to be top, and then we're going to be working with height instead of width because we're dealing on the Y-axis. And there we go. And that's how we get our mouse position based off of the differences in sizes between the canvas as well as the web page, which could be pretty much anything. Then I want to be able to save my canvas images. So create a new function once again, and I'm just going to call this save canvas image. It's not going to need to get any parameters passed to it to do its job. And we already have saved image data, a variable created. And how we go and save that information is just use a function inside of the context. So get image data, and we're going to start in the upper left-hand corner, and we're going to get the whole canvas. So we just pass in whatever the canvas width is, as well as the canvas height. So pretty straightforward. And that's all we got to do. And then we need to redraw the canvas. And how you redraw the canvas, well, let's just call this redraw canvas image. Again, no parameters inside of there. All you need to do is, again, use a function, and it's going to be put image data, and it is this guy, saved image data. Paste that in there, and there we go. Now we're able to save the canvas as well as redraw it. Now we get into a little bit more complicated thing because we have to update our rubber band size data as the mouse moves around. So what do we need to be able to do? Well, let's first off go in here and rename this. So I'm just going to call it update rubber band size data, and it's going to be past the mouse position. Then what we need to do is we have to figure out what the width and height are for our bounding box. So just think like you're drawing rectangles on the screen. That'll help it make a little bit more sense. So if I want to go and get my width, I'm going to say shape bounding box. So just think of a rectangle that we're drawing on the screen. The width is going to be equal to the absolute value of the mouse position currently on the screen minus whatever the mouse X position is where it was originally clicked down. So mouse, and then this is mouse down. Isn't that what I called it? Let me make sure. Nope, I actually called it mouse. You know what? I'm going to change this one to that one. And if that causes any problem, we'll fix it later. Okay? So we're trying to figure out what the width is based off of where they originally clicked on with their mouse and the current position. And we can figure out the height in pretty much the same way. So let's change this to height. And this is going to be whatever the Y position is when they're moving the mouse around versus the Y position of where they originally clicked. Now we're going to have to handle a couple different situations here. If the mouse is below where the mouse was clicked originally, we're going to have to do different things because we have to figure out what the upper left-hand corner is for drawing our boxes on the screen. And if let's say they clicked in the upper right-hand corner or upper left-hand corner and then drug down, well, in that situation where they originally clicked is going to be the upper left hand. But if they clicked on the screen and then drug the rectangle above where they originally clicked, we're going to have to flip that. So all we need to do is say if the current location for our mouse is greater than where they originally clicked down with the mouse, then we want to store the mouse down position in the left part of our rectangle because it is the farthest left. So I'm just going to go shape bounding box, and left in this situation is going to be the mouse down position. Else, well, we know in that situation it's going to be the opposite. So we'll say shape bounding box left, and in that situation it's going to be wherever the mouse is currently located. All right, so that's how we're able to switch those two things. Now we're going to have to do the same thing whenever we are calculating the top of our rectangle we'll be drawing on the screen. So I'm just going to copy this because we're going to use exactly the same logic again. So in this situation, I'm going to say if the current mouse position, Y, is greater than the mouse down position, Y, well, in that situation, I'm going to change my top to be equal to the mouse down position, Y. And I'm going to do the same thing, mouse down top, and this is going to be, otherwise I'm going to switch it to the current mouse position. And that is basically all we need to do to update our shape bounding box object. So now we can go and get the angle using the X and Y positions on the screen. But first what we're going to have to do is review some trigonometry. Okay, so basically we're going to be doing a lot of figuring out the hypotenuses and the angles based off of knowing the X position, which would be the adjacent for a triangle, or the Y position of the mouse using the opposite. And we can use the sine, cosine, and tangent functions to be able to figure this out. So if we know any two of these things, either the degree or angle or the hypotenuse, we can figure out the opposite. Or if we know the angle and the opposite, we can find the hypotenuse. And we would just use different functions depending upon what data we are specifically looking for. So if we have adjacent and we want to find hypotenuse, we would use cosine, and so forth and so on. And I'll show you here an example. So for example, let's say we know this is a 45-degree angle and we want to find the opposite, and we know the length of the hypotenuse is going to be 1.414. So if we take the sine of 45 degrees, we get 0.7071. And we still want to get the opposite. In that situation, we just multiply 0.7071 by 1.414, and we would get our opposite total length, which is going to be equal to 0.999 or rounded up to 1. And that's how we're able to get all of this complicated stuff. Likewise, let's say we do not know the angle, but we do know the opposite and adjacent. And I will create a function for this. What we can do is we can take the arctangent of whatever the opposite and adjacent values are, which in this situation would be equal to 1. And whenever we do that, we would find out that the actual angle is 45 degrees. Very important, however, to know that we are going to be working mostly with radians inside of our JavaScript trigonometry functions. And if you want to convert from a radian to a degree, you would just multiply times 180 divided by pi to get the degree. And if you want to get the radian and you have the degree, you would just multiply the degree times pi divided by 180. All functions that I'm going to implement right now. Okay, so we have to get our angle using the x and y. How do we do that? Well, in this situation, we know that the x is going to be equal to the adjacent length, and we know that the y is going to be equal to the opposite length. We also then know that if we have the tangent of the angle, that is going to be equal to whatever the opposite value is divided by whatever the adjacent is. And if we then want to get our angle, we're going to have to take the arctangent of whatever the opposite divided by the adjacent is. Okay, so a little bit complicated if you're not used to using trigonometry, but I'm going to create the function right now. So I'm going to call this function get angle using x and y. And this guy is going to have the mouse location x as well as the mouse location y, which are going to be the opposite and adjacents. And how we're going to get our adjacent is to go and get mouse down x minus the current mouse location x. Likewise, we're going to be able to get the opposite by going and getting the mouse down y and the mouse location y. And then based off of that, we are going to be able to return. What we're going to need to do here first is go and create this function, which is going to convert radians to degrees. So function radians to degrees. It's going to get a radian value and it's going to return a degree, obviously. And I'm going to say if the radian is less than 0. Actually, I don't even need to do that. I can just return this. I can just say return whatever the radian is, multiply times 180 divided by pi, which is stored inside of there. And then I want to convert this into only having 2 decimal places. So I'm going to say 2 fixed is 2. And while I'm doing this, I might as well create degrees to radians as well. So this is going to be a function, and I'm just going to call it degrees to radians. It's going to get whatever the degrees are, and it's going to return the radians. So degrees multiplied times, and I already showed you these functions, math pi again, divided by 180. And there we go. Now we have those functions. All right, so now we can come back up here and do our arctangent. So we're going to say radians to degrees, because this is get angle using x and y. So radians to degrees, and we'll say math, and the arctangent function is this guy right here. And we pass inside of it whatever the opposite length is as well as the adjacent length. And that is going to give us our angle. Okay? So hopefully that's understandable. Another thing we're going to have to do is draw our rubber band shape, which I'm not going to do right now. I think I'm going to cover what exactly we're going to do with react to the mouse movement and the rest of these guys, and then we will wait until the next tutorial to finish up the entire app. All right, so what are we going to do whenever we react to the mouse being clicked? Well, I'm going to create a function called react to mouse down, so because that's what I called it above. And is it going to get anything? Yes, it's going to receive the event information on where the mouse was clicked. What are some things that I would like to do? Well, I'd like to change the mouse pointer to something that's a little bit more like a drawing thing. So I'm going to change the cursor on it into a crosshair. I'm going to store the location for the mouse, and I can go and use my function, get mouse position, and pass inside of it the event information that was provided to me. And then what I'm going to do here is get mouse position. If we remember, we can go up here, see, get mouse position, and those X and Y's are passed inside of there. And then we can go and change based off of the size and position of the canvas in relation to the size and position of the web page we're working with. So now we got that. At this point, I want to save my canvas image because I'm just about ready to start drawing new stuff on it. So I want to save what's already there, and then I will load it back onto the screen after we're done drawing with our current tool. I want to store my mouse click position in my mouse down object, and that whenever we first click is going to be exactly the same as where the current position for the mouse is. So I'm just going to take it from that guy. Going to do the same exact thing once again for our Y position. Another thing we're going to have to do is we're going to have to monitor if we are dragging the mouse. And at this point, since the mouse is down, yes, we are dragging it. We're probably also going to have to do some fancy things with the brush because the brush is going to act in a completely different way from everything else. So I'm just going to call this handle brush, and then I'll do that in the next part of the tutorial. And at this point, that's all I want to do there. So now what I want to do is create the other function, which is going to be react to mouse move. Again, it's going to receive some event information. I'm going to make sure, I'm going to click on the crosshair again just to use that whenever we are moving around on the canvas all together. What am I going to need to do? Well, I'm going to have to get our current mouse position. Can do that once again with get mouse position. Then pass in our page X and Y position to figure that out. And then I'm going to have to once again do some fancy things with our brush, which I will handle in the next part of the tutorial. How are we going to react to mouse up? Let's go copy that again. React to mouse up. Again, we're going to have an event. We're going to change our cursor here to our default cursor. Again, I want to get my current mouse position. Let's just go and copy this because that has to constantly be updated. I'm going to want to redraw the canvas after the mouse comes up. So redraw canvas image. I'm going to update my rubber band information, and I will create that function again in the next part. So update rubber band on movement, and we're going to pass in our information on where the mouse position is there. And since the mouse is no longer being held down, no longer clicked, we know that we can change dragging to false. And we also know that we're going to be able to change the fact that we're using a brush, which is going to be a fancy thing that's going to work completely different from our objects, also to false. And then the final thing is I'm going to show you how to save images and load new images. So what I want to do is I want to get this guy down here, this link that we have that's going to allow the user to download images. I'm going to get a hold of that, and I'm going to manipulate what is in the download section and mainly the reference to the actual image so the user will be able to click on it and download it. So let's just call this function save image. It doesn't need to be passed anything. I need to get a reference to the link element that I want to work with. So I'm going to call this image files equal to document, and then get element by ID again, and its name is image file inside of there. And then I just want to change the attributes for it. So I'll say image file set attribute, and I want to change download. And you could be able to come in here and manually figure out whatever you want the image name to be, but I'm just going to set it to the default, which is just going to be image ping. And then this is the important part. I'm going to actually set the attribute for the reference to the canvas drawing. So image file, set attribute again, and this time I'll say hreference. And then to actually get the canvas drawing, you go canvas to data URL, and that will provide you access to the canvas image. And that's all we need to do there if we want to save the image and allow the user to download it. We're also going to want to be able to open images. Again, no attributes. Let's go get image and create an image object. And then once the image is loaded, what we want to do is clear the canvas and then draw the new image. How you do that is you go image on load, and then you define the function that you want to actually call once the image is loaded. Again, you're going to use context, and we're going to clear the screen. Going to start in the upper left-hand corner, and then clear the entire canvas based off of whatever its width is and whatever its height is. And then after we have it cleared, we can draw our imported image with draw image. Just pass whatever the image is and say start in the upper left-hand corner, and it will draw it. And then right here, outside of that function, we go image source is equal to image ping, which is the default name I'm using. Of course, you could change that. All right, guys, so there is a lot of information, and in the next part of the tutorial, I'm going to completely finish the entire app. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this, and like always, please leave your questions and comments below. Otherwise, till next time.